Yeah, he doing his thing, man. What's up, people? JB Wins, Dogon SS. We are here. Conscious Approach on YouTube. Thanks to everybody who is tuning in. Thanks to
You
everybody who clicks on the videos. Thanks to everybody who subscribes to the channel, likes, leaves a comment. We certainly appreciate the support as we continue to crank out this logical content. Uh, NBA playoffs are in full swing. April the 23rd. Shouts out to the Denver Nuggets, Team Nuggets over here. And before we get started, man, want to go ahead and always put that disclaimer out there. If you appreciate the content in this or any other video that we publish to this channel, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Hit that like button. We certainly appreciate it. Let us know what you think about the commentary in any of these videos. We certainly appreciate that.
you
With those pleasantries out of the way, we'll go ahead and get things kicked off. First up, we are going to talk about Mr. Brian Williams himself, aka Birdman. Yeah, uh, the record label charlatan 2.0. He learned from the best after Diddy Puff, I would say,
seriously.
in terms of how to run a tight ship of a record label.
Mhm.
And Birdman recently was on a podcast, and he wanted to dispel the belief that hip hop is gone soft these days. So he joined Steve O. Anybody who is familiar with Steve O, the guy who made a name for himself doing crazy stunts on that Jackass show. Um that's how Steve O goes way back to like the '90s and early 2000s. Him and that other guy, Johnny Knoxville, when they had that show on MTV, Jackass, and they was always doing crazy stunts. So
Mhm.
Steve O now has a podcast, and Birdman was recently a guest on the podcast, and they got onto the subject about hip hop and how apparently it has become soft. But according to Birdman, he actually does not think it has become soft. He actually thinks that it's quite the opposite, that it's never been more violent, and that he hopes one day that the violence kind of quells and we get back to it being less about violence and more about good times in the music. So, providing a little context here, this article says Birdman shuts down theories that hip hop has become soft. There has been plenty of discourse about the current state of hip hop as of late, particularly amid all of the viral rap beef taking place online. It sparked questions of whether or not hip hop has become soft, as instead of hashing things out in the streets, artists' new go to is social media. During a recent appearance on Steve O's Wild Ride, Birdman chimed into the debate, revealing whether or not he believes things have changed since his come up in the 90s. According to him, things haven't gotten better in terms of violence. In fact, he thinks things have gotten worse. F no, the Cash Money Records icon said of hip hop becoming soft. We was cool back then without social media. Now these young N words killing. It's a different operation. You just got to know how to adjust either way. It's a different time from then to now. He went on to note that social media makes it easier to start problems with people and how immediately things can spread. Back then, we didn't have social media. So if you got a problem with an N word, who gonna know? Because you ain't making songs about no N word. But nowadays with social media, you got a problem. The whole world gonna know. It's just a different time, and I just hope it get better, bro. He said. Birdman elaborated, noting how he hopes the violence will come to an end once and for all. I don't want to see people losing their lives because that's happening. He explained. Even N words rapping are not rapping. People really losing their lives over social media. What do you think of Birdman's take on the current state of hip hop? Blah 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 blah. So I'm not going to play a snippet from the show because these days I don't know who is fair use versus who is going to hit you with a copyright strike for playing snippets of their own stuff on your own channel, repurposing content. So, as a result, as always, all relevant links will be in the description of this video. You can click on this and hit that for yourself so that you can watch that and hear him say it for himself. But nevertheless, that is sort of a transcript journalistically of what he had to say about hip hop being more violent and people losing their lives and how it ain't as cool as it used to be. So, what's your take on what Birdman had to say? Is he correct? gotten worse? Has the violence gotten worse? Is hip hop, in fact, not soft as people might proclaim it to be?
I think um, I think he has a point in the sense that it's still violent, as violent as it has ever been. I would say that it is equally as violent, especially a lot of the stuff that he was responsible for putting out. I don't know where he's getting at with that. Now, I think where he's more or less what he's getting at is that they're actually taking it to the streets and they're actually being violent while they were just in the studio. So I think that's more or less where his angle's coming from. But as far as the lyrics are concerned, as far as the lifestyle that they're promoting, it's just the same level of violence. And I was doing myself some homework, if you will, listening to some old Master P, trying to figure out why everybody loves this Ice Cream Man album so much. Why it's such a heralded classic. Now, listen, I'm not trying to get in anybody's bad graces here if you are a Master P fan, especially the Ice Cream album. But I'm sitting here listening to it and I'm like, this is deplorable stuff here. Well, what he's promoting. And now that, hindsight, that everybody can see who Master P really is and see that he was more or less a mastermind of the situation and played the rap game more than him actually being a rapper. You can actually see him in a way where it's like, okay, yeah, you're just talking this stuff just to talk it, pretty much. And the things that he was saying was grape related, forcible entry, selling drugs to family members. The same stuff you hear now. And so this is in this guy's era. So for him to say that it's gotten more violent, I would beg to differ. I just think that there's just more rappers rapping violently because it's just more rappers now. But no, I think that this is hogwash. I'm not buying what he's selling here. Sorry. I feel as though that he was very responsible. If there is a Mount Rushmore or a four horsemen of the 2000s, he's part of it. And he's responsible for a lot of the garbage and dribble. And you can run down the line from Wayne to Drake, Nicki Minaj, and all of that. So this guy's very responsible for adding filth and sewage to the pipeline of people's earlobes. So I'm not buying this guy, and I call BS. So what are your thoughts, man? Do you agree with Birdman here? Do you feel like lyrics nowadays are more violent?
Maybe he's uh, far be it for me to give Birdman the benefit of the doubt, but
Oh,
maybe he's like, because he's, what is he, like 50 something?
yeah.
So maybe now, since he's getting up there, maybe now he's realizing, oh, maybe we took it a little too far. I don't know. I don't know.
Nah,
Maybe
nah, don't cut him that flat.
no, I'm not. I'm not giving him that. I'm just saying maybe that's in his mind. I don't know, because I hear what you're saying. He was definitely at the head of perpetuating a lot of the things that he claims to be a problem now. And I will say that I do think what he is trying to suggest is, before it was all on music records,
Hmm, hmm.
and now they're actually taking it a step further and actually doing the things.
Okay.
But this speaks to some of the stuff that you've talked about before, where, like, in previous generations of these artists, the studio thugs beget the eventual generations of people who thought that in order to be genuine and authentic to this music and this culture, that they
Hmm.
had to actually be in the streets replicating what they rapped about and what they heard about, without actually knowing that the stuff that the people that they got this from, that those, a lot of those individuals were not actually actively being kingpins and doing crazy stuff in reality.
Correct.
But if you look at what's going on, with some of these guys and what they're getting into, it's hard to argue against what he's saying at face value. Now, I would have to do a deeper dive and to just see what the ratio of, like, rappers getting bammed up in previous eras is compared to, like, the current era. But if you do like a quick rundown on some of this stuff that's going on, if on the surface, what he's saying isn't incorrect. Like, and we already know about some of the ones that are more mainstream, like Young Thug, right? Where he's got his Rico situation going on and robbery and all of this other kind of stuff that he's got going on. But then you got other people like Lucci about to go away for a long time on some violent offenses. And then you got the C murders. It's a lot. It's a lot going on, man. Fetty Wap for his trafficking. You got that Melly kid.
Mhm.
And this is a situation from down here in Florida where he's kind of looking at 2 counts where of the M word taking people out. It's a lot of them,
Mhm.
Blueface and Sue Surf, Casanova. That's another one with this racketeering and all of this kind of stuff. There's a lot
Mhm.
of racketeerings and money launderings, which speaks to the
Yeah.
point which speaks to the thing that you brought up before, where it's like scamming
Mhm.
became part of the fabric of the culture of this music.
Mhm.
So much so that in order to feel as though you are being authentically true to being a part of making the music, you feel like you have to be a scammer yourself. So now these guys, instead of making music and just basically being, walking personified fabrications, they're
Mhm.
actually doing the scamming. They're doing the racketeerings. They're doing the money launderings. They're getting put in jail for RICOs. And I think the cautionary tale for a lot of this is an understanding that this is largely built upon a foundation that is not real. Like all of this stuff that came along with this music, where these guys are just basically trying to be real life kingpins, it was based upon the observation of artists that came before them who themselves weren't actually doing it.
Right.
So upon learning that they weren't actually doing it, it's probably wise to understand the importance of trying to develop or at least, you know, um, devise a delicate balance that you can strike between being a part of the fabric of the music and being as authentic as you can be, but not actually putting yourself in position to be put in prison for the rest of your life. And it sends a weird message to the rest of these young kids who want to be a part of this music themselves, because all they're going to do is continue the trend. So I kind of feel like what he's saying, even though it sounds a little weird because he's the one saying it, and like I said, he was a part of perpetuating it, a lot of it himself through a lot of the music that he facilitated. Uh, he's not entirely wrong from the standpoint that if you just kind of do a quick Google search on a lot of these guys who are kind of dealing with this kind of stuff, whether it's violent or whether it's just scamming or both, because a lot of them are doing both.
Mhm.
The list does seem to have exponentially increased over the course of new generations. And so for that, you have to ask yourself why. Weird that it's coming from Birdman, but um, without doing any deeper dives on how it happened in the past and what the ratio was, the numbers do seem to be quite alarming.
I mean, yeah, bro. But I mean, I guess what he means by soft is like they not studio gangsters. I guess he's saying that their actions are more violent than ever, not their rhymes.
Yeah, I think what he was contesting was the assertion that there's more fake soft rappers in the game who ain't
Mhm.
about that life. I think that's what he was getting at. People like Drake, for example.
Yeah, yeah.
People like Drake who get on these rap songs and talk about what they'll do to you when
Right.
everyone knows he's not really going to do that to you. And so I think it's a prevailing wisdom going around that there's a lot of fake studio thugs, and there
Mhm.
are. And I think what Birdman was trying to say was it actually isn't. It's more, you know, people in the game who is about that life for real. But then he tried to turn it around to make it seem as though, it's not actually a good thing. We need to have less violence. So it kind of seemed like he was trying to have his cake and eat it too.
Yeah, yeah, playing a fence there, but again, this is just a wrong messenger kind of situation. I don't want to hear this coming from him.
Yeah.
So, because I blame him for a large majority of this mess right now. Uh, he's just one of my people on my chart list.
Yeah.
Um, and let's just do a little time travel. Now, before his influence, Dwayne Carter, all right, is a direct, all right. If this guy was the father, as they say, then Wayne's the son. Son was doing whatever was being commanded of him. And what Lil Wayne was doing was he started promoting drugs, like doing the drugs. And then he started promoting gang activity, gang affiliation. Now, we had gang stuff floating around, but it was not cool to be in a gang. Like, it wasn't gangs around. And then, but as soon as he started doing this red flag stuff, people started claiming Crip or claiming blood, and then it was like a whole bunch of blood rappers. And I was like, what is this? Then women like Nicki would come out with blood stuff on, like, I was like, what's happening here? And it was just a heavy promotion of getting young people locked up. Hey, we're not doing this for real. We're just wearing the flags. These new guys now, they need to calm down. It's like, what are you talking about? This is a direct reflection of your influence. So that's the part about this that just rubs me the wrong way. Is just that he to me, like I said, one of the four horsemen. I don't know who the other are, but he's definitely one of them. Diddy Puff on that list.
Yeah.
And you know what I'm saying? And Birdman's right up there with him. You know what I'm saying?
Suge might be the third. Suge might be the third one.
Suge's up there too. Yeah, he's responsible. He got his hand in some mess. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, man. So I don't want to hear this stuff, but there's an interesting thing that goes on when you start to look back in history, though. So right now we have rappers who are actually getting locked up for RICOs. The people who they used to listen to were studio gangsters.
Right.
Studio gangsters, more or less in that wave of time, grew up around the crack era. Also, so we want to go back to that time to where, everybody wants to report about what's going on in their community and what they're seeing, what they grew up watching and witnessing. And so a lot of those people, again, they grew up in the crack era. Some of them crack babies. And then so they were talking about what they were seeing at that time. And so everybody knows the crack was going crazy in the 80s. And so if you just look further back, then you'll just see the influence or the increased amount of cocaine that was coming into the United States in the 70s. There's like a lineage. I can go further and deeper, but the point I'm trying to make is that cocaine in abundance came into the United States in the 70s. And then in there, the 80s, crack was a thing. And then once crack took over, people started doing the crack. People started selling the crack. And then the community started to go down. Values went down. Parenting and community went down. And the kids that were that we call studio gangsters, they grew up in that era seeing that stuff where there's not values. I can just talk about making, raps about selling drugs and murder or whatever. It's like no values from community because they got wrecked in the 80s. And then so those people started talking that food. And in the midst of all of this stuff going on, there's all kinds of other programming going on. But once these studio gangsters get in there and start talking that stuff where they were talking about what they saw and witnessed, now with these new people who are growing up, they saw and witnessed the people that were talking about it all the time, but weren't really doing it. And I'm going to be the real, what, and be out here actually finessing and selling for real. And so it's just a whole thing where drugs get introduced into our community. Now, 40 years later, we have guys actually rapping, glorifying, doing it. It's just a mess. And this guy right here served as you know, a conduit,
Yeah.
an assist. He was out here facilitating the trash. So he can sit here and say that, you know, we need to be less violent, either in our lyrics or actually one to one. Like if it comes to real beefing and people die on online stuff, like he can say whatever he wants about that. But that's way too late, bro. I don't want to hear anything from him or his cronies. So yeah, man, it's just a bad timeline, man. But if you will, people, you know, do yourselves a favor and look at some timelines in history and see what caused what, and or what led to what, or what had influence on what. And then you can start to see a story of, hey, this is what happened to our community, you know.
Yeah.
And the music is a large part of it.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, one of the things that I rail about, or one of the things that I have railed about a lot, is the notion that this music is like synonymous with the culture of our community.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that to be a dangerous thing to believe in, because the behaviors and the content inherent in the music, if you believe that your culture is that music, well then you're suggesting that your culture is that behavior and that content.
Mm-hmm.
And part of what made it so easy for people to believe that, in my opinion, was the glorification of a lot of a lot of that behavior. There was a concerted effort to make the content of this music in fact cool. And I mean, it's an age old adage that whatever black people in particular get their hands on, they can turn basically anything into being something endearing or being cool. Well, that means you can also take the contents of this music and turn it into something that's endearing and cool. A byproduct of that, however, is people are going to want to replicate that in future generations, because who doesn't want to do stuff that's cool?
Mm-hmm.
But when you're replicating things in future generations because you want to do something that's cool, you're replicating things that put people in harm's way. And you're doing it knowing all of this. So, in retrospect, it makes it difficult for you to be taken seriously when you talk about how we need to be better about toning down the violence. That part I don't really understand. However, the genesis of it is rooted in this idea of the culture and the music being synonymous with the community, and everything that's a part of culture is what's cool and what's supposed to be sort of you know um mimicked, sort of. That's what you see. It's your cultural signifier. It's cool, therefore I want to be a part of this, because we all have this intrinsic need to be a part of culture and community.
Mm-hmm.
That's why that message going all the way back to the late 80s was so effective, especially when you're dealing with a group of people who historically do not have a sense of community or culture. You can then supplant something like music in its place to make people act in a designed manner. So, like, you know, now we are sort of in the present and we're seeing the fruits of that labor. And unfortunately, um, these people are going out here and acting in a designed manner so that they can be consistent with the rhetoric inherent in the music. And that's the danger with this stuff. And we can go on down the list here. And let me make one amendment to what I said earlier, because I was a bit factually incorrect. I
Okay.
think I said Lucci's about to go away for a long time. That's actually not true.
Okay.
Based on the limited amount of research that I did, Lucci's getting credit for time served, and I think he copped a plea deal or something of that nature. But he should be eligible for parole sometime in 2024. But
Interesting.
be that as it may, my point is taken with a lot of the dynamics inherent in this stuff. So I agree with you when it comes to the wrong messenger type deal, because he was largely at the head of the perpetuation of a lot of these tropes going back to the mid 90s.
Yeah.
So it's kind of weird to hear him speak on it now. Um, and it kind of makes me wonder whether he's even aware of the progenation of a lot of what's going on today. But I can say that, but then on the other hand, say on its face, what he is saying does have some merit, because I do think that there's been an uptick in the frequency of this. But I also think that he and his cohort share in some of the responsibility for that. So
Well, I mean, I guess because yeah, it went from being 80% of the music to 90%,
Well, just in terms of the sheer amounts of incarcerations, I think, and like the
Yeah.
sheer amounts, and that's what I'm saying. I don't know for a fact. That's why I'd have to do some
Mhm.
research to see what the actual ratio is, but it just feels like it's more. I mean, it just feels like every other day I'm looking on at some article of somebody who's getting locked up, who's a rapper,
Yeah, or
and it's just weird.
unalived.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's crazy. But
Man,
yeah,
man.
Birdman talking about it is just kind of funny.
Well, again, a couple more examples just because it popped in my head. Him having videos stationed in prison. What's that about? It was like a whole phase in the early 2000s where a lot of videos were either stationed in jail or running from the police. This is what the whole video is. They're just running. Woo, 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 woo. What they running from? Or it's shot in situations where it's really slummed down. You know, that was like a whole genre set. Like even now, if you turn on some videos now, whatever these kids are doing, they're in some trap house, with money and 40 dudes, no women. So it's a lot of this weird stuff going on, but they learned that from somewhere. That's the blueprint. That's the blueprint. And this guy was responsible for help laying that. So hey man, kids grow up, bro, and they grew up learning this stuff, and what do you know? They're actually out here committing crime. Oh hey, what do you know? Music actually impacts the psyche of the masses. Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, hey, these kids need to calm down. Nah, dude.
Yeah,
No, dude. So hey man, these
I'm
these
with
are
you.
all of your chillings out here, man.
Yeah, I'm with you. And one thing that we do need to stop doing because it is 2024 is talking about product of their environments and what's the other thing they say? Survival. Product of their environment and survival. This is what they do to survive. They are a product of their environment. No, they're just replicating things that they saw in the music that they listened to growing up.
Yeah,
These
product
were
of
their
trauma.
culture. Yes, these were their cultural signifiers. It's a product of mind control, not
Mhm.
necessarily a product of their environment. And I think that we need to draw that distinction because it's getting a little tiresome to keep using that excuse over and over again. They're literally replicating what they thought was actually happening via the music that they listened to, in my
Exactly.
opinion.
Exactly.
And shouts out to Marcus Dudley, perhaps the biggest member of the tribe on the chat.
Yeah.
Birdman should have put a caveat on his records. We are actually lying. If you actually do these things with any consistency, please do not be dumb enough. Put it in records. Yeah, I mean, we must have skipped that step. We definitely skipped that step. Um,
Or if you listen to this for X amount of hours, please consult a mental health physician. You know what I'm saying? There needs to be warning.
yeah,
There needs to be
yeah,
Surgeon General warnings on these dudes' music. How about that?
yeah. On the labels, yeah. Yeah, but it's just, I mean, it's historical psychology for sure, and we can no longer, the prevalence of it is so much so that I don't think we can rest on the laurels of it being like they have to do these things to survive. No, they're doing these things because it was glorified and
Yep.
presented to them as a package to be consumed through music,
Yep.
and they're just replicating the process. And if we can be honest about that, then maybe what Birdman is suggesting can happen will. But until then, it'll just be a repeated cycle, in my opinion.
100, man. Hey, Birdman, get out of here with that. I'm not trying to hear that crap.
Yeah, what
Hey,
happened
make
to that boy?
exactly.
He made a song with the Clips. Yeah, what did happen to that boy, Birdman? Why don't you tell us?
What's that with Eclipse?
Yeah, yeah,
Hey, make sure y'all like and subscribe too, by the way, man. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
We're on our way to 1K, bro. We close to like 700 right now, man. Help us get over that hump. Screw.
yeah. Like and subscribe, baby.
You.